Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year. We're going to be talking a little bit about different diet plans because that's what everyone is talking about in the new year. That's the biggest New Year's resolution is, hey, I'm going to lose weight for the summer, especially after all the food I ate over the holidays. Let's get into different diets and how they work and some of the mechanisms. Consistency is going to be your key in the future for any type of diet plan. Really, a lifestyle change is much better than a diet plan. Some of these will kick you into a better way of thinking about food and a better way of approaching food and lifestyle. I think it's important to understand the science of why you're dieting the way you're dieting. When you're considering a diet, you can make choices that are going to work better for the long term for you. One diet that I've done myself and that I've done for quite a few patients that I've had success with is something called the HCG diet. A lot of you have heard of this diet. It stands for human chorionic gonadotropin, which is a hormone of pregnancy. Don't get worried, guys. You're not going to get pregnant. The concept of this diet was developed by Dr. A.T. Simeons. And he did this diet I think in Italy somewhere, and celebrities would fly over to him and he'd provide the food and all of that. He wrote a prospectus, pounds and inches, towards the end of his career so that he could share with the rest of the world the way to do this diet. It does require injecting a hormone every day. A.T. Simeons did it intramuscular, and he didn't have the products we have available today. So he did intramuscular injections. He talks about that he feels like it's a reset to your brain, some of your hypothalamic, pituitary axis things that it kind of resets those systems in your brain. I kind of feel like I like the more basic science of this diet. The basic science is it tricks your body. You're taking the hormone of pregnancy. It tricks your body into a pregnancy state. And so what is different about a pregnancy state? So trick your body into a pregnancy state and then give you low-calorie diet. 500 calories a day on average. It's not very much. What happens in the triggering of pregnancy is you have a baby in the womb, and that baby needs nutrients constantly and consistently for its growth and development. And so it triggers the body into keeping nutrients in the bloodstream constantly. That's one key to the diet. The other key is it helps the body utilize fat as a source of energy rather than muscle when you're in a state of starvation. So normal dieting, you have about 10 to 15 pounds of what we call buffer fat that's available for pretty immediate use. So you go on a diet for a couple of weeks, you lose that buffer fat, you feel like you've gotten somewhere and you've lost 10 to 15 pounds, and then you kind of hit a wall and your body thinks you're in a state of starvation. So during that state of starvation, your body thinks that you're in a famine. And so it's going to try to conserve energy as much as possible. And how do you do that? Your highest metabolic tissue in the body that is dispensable is your muscle. And so you start to break down muscle mass. And muscle mass is your metabolic fuel. That's the tissue in your body that uses energy at rest. And so your body wants to get rid of that so that you can decrease your metabolic rate, which most of us don't want to lose. Our muscle mass is very valuable. It was hard to obtain and it's hard to maintain. Then your body loses about 10 pounds of muscle. And by that time you're starving. You think you've lost 20 to 25 pounds. You think you're doing good. You're starving. And so you go off the diet and then you gain all the weight back very quickly as fat and you look bigger than ever before. And that's kind of the concept of yo-yo dieting. During the time of HCG, when the body thinks it's pregnant, your body utilizes fat instead of muscle for energy because the mother needs to stay strong to protect the baby. So it is a species over individual process. So it's preserving the species rather than the individual. During that time, if a mother is, say, nauseated at the beginning of the pregnancy, having lots of nausea, throwing up, can't keep any food down, a lot of women experience this at different levels, then the baby is still getting nutrients. And so that's important for the baby to continue to get nutrients. But it's at the expense of fat and not muscle. And so in this whole process, while you're on the HCG and then you're going on low calories as if you're not able to get enough or you're not able to hold down enough, your body will target the fat primarily for energy. And you don't feel that hungry on the diet once your metabolism kicks in. You don't feel that hungry because there's nutrients in the bloodstream all the time from the fat. And it targets more the stored fat than that buffer fat we talked about. And so in this diet, you go straight to stored fat, which is more permanent weight loss. You preserve your muscle mass, which is very important in dieting. You want to maintain your muscle mass. And there's not a lot of hunger. The foods in the diet are very basic, and so they also train you kind of in a way to eat. The foods are basic with a protein, as much non-starchy vegetable as you would like, and then a very small amount of carb in the way of either a breadstick or a Melba toast, which is a small amount of carb, and then a fruit. You are getting some carbs in the diet, but things are very basic. You're eating basic natural foods. And that's also another concept of weight loss, is staying away from preservatives and processed foods. The diet does kind of train you in ways to eat that are more healthy. And if you maintain those after the diet, that's another benefit for your lifestyle. You've got to plan for it. You've got to be meticulous. You've got to have some food prep. You've got to have food ready ahead of time, unless you're at home all day and you can just prepare something. But you've got to take food with you to work, because nothing that you can order online is going to actually suffice. You've got to have food prep, meal prep. And that's why it's nice to actually have some recipes for some variety. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have made recipes for the HCG diet. My daughter never published it, but she had some recipes that she used to do that make the diet a little bit more interesting, because the foods are pretty boring. So that's HCG diet in a nutshell. It's a good diet if you're looking for something that really helps to train your lifestyle. And also there's another person who's written about this, and it's Kevin Trudeau. He kind of wrote about it in a book, and that it was a miraculous sort of thing that was discovered and all of that. And so he's got a lot more information as well. I know there's some companion manuals out there that you can buy. If you are considering the HCG diet, you will need a prescribed medication for that. So you'll have to seek out a doctor who will support that. Another diet that is not necessarily trendy, it's been around for a long time, and a lot of the bodybuilding and fitness community have used this a lot. Again, it requires a lot of planning, and it's the carb loading diet. Some of carb loading is kind of advertised on these diets where people say that you can have pizza and you can do these things and you're shredded like me. And so when you hear that, that's usually a carb loading based diet. You load carbs over the weekend, and that's usually your only source of carbs and glycogen storage for your body. And then throughout the week, you have a highly protein, non-starchy vegetable, sort of ketosis sort of diet for the rest of the week. And you gradually burn up all the glycogen stores, and then throughout the week, and it does affect energy some throughout the week and your workout strength and things like that. But then you reload at the weekend again. There's a lot of celebrities and celebrity trainers that use this diet to lean people up very quickly for a role or for a movie. And it is very effective for pretty quickly changing your metabolic rate, because your metabolism can shut down when you just have a very steady, regular diet doing the same thing every day, day in, day out. How this works is it's one of the diets that affects the way your insulin metabolism works. Insulin's a very important hormone for dieting. It controls how the cells absorb nutrients. And that's why with type 2 diabetes, usually weight is almost always involved, because when you're insulin resistant, it takes more insulin to have the same effect in your body. But there are different places in your body where the insulin works differently. You become more insulin resistant early on in the muscles being able to use insulin. And later on, the fat cells become insulin resistant. So as the muscles become more insulin resistant, then you can't utilize, and so you have low energy, but then any extra carbs you have around in your body get stored in fat very easily. That's why insulin is such an important hormone when it comes to dieting, when it comes to a lot of metabolic issues in your body. Most of the diets that we talk about will have insulin kind of as the base thing that is influence and why the diet can work. Carb loading is one of those diets that you store a bunch of glycogen, possibly fat over the weekends, kind of for energy so that you can release that. And then you basically go into a state of ketosis throughout the week and then use up all that stored energy. And then you go back and you fill it up on the weekend. But it's also a change for your diet. Lots of diets that change up what you eat and how you eat kind of keep tricking the body into thinking that it needs to gear up its metabolism. And so that's another way that this diet works. Another diet that people use, and you've probably heard this term, maybe you've even tried it yourself, is intermittent fasting. That's usually where you fast for more than 14 to 16 hours out of the day. In other words, you stop eating at a certain time at night, and then from that time forward to the next morning, you count 14 plus hours before you eat again. Again, this is one of the diets. It affects the way your insulin works. It keeps you from spiking insulin as much. And it's one of those things that you're tricking your body by changing things up. Your body's not getting food all the time. Another thing that this benefits is it helps your body take care of or remove something we call senescent cells. Zombie cells. Which is important to your metabolism because senescent cells are ones that are sitting around in your body that really don't do anything. They're kind of at the end of their life, but if you have plenty of nutrition around, your body doesn't feel like it needs to get rid of them. Intermittent fasting has benefits from that perspective. Also, part of one school of thought is that cancer can be affected by fasting. And there is a school of thought that the enzymes in your body are what help to stabilize your cells and to eat up or get used to prevent any abnormal cells in your body like cancer cells. The more time in between food, the enzymes that your pancreas can produce can be used to fight cancer rather than to digest food. Intermittent fasting also aids in that time. And that's another plug for almost any diet when you do eat food to take additional digestive enzymes. Find a good quality brand, take digestive enzymes, and that helps to digest your food more completely, which makes the food more accessible to your body and less allergenic to your body. When foods are allergenic to your body, they cause inflammation. Inflammation releases cortisol, and cortisol causes you to want to hold on to fat. So another good thing about this intermittent fasting is it does stimulate your body's mechanisms for cleaning itself up for a healthy cellular structure in your body. Next, we want to talk about the warrior diet. There's books written on this. And again, this is an insulin-related diet. Helps with the insulin metabolism in your body. So the warrior diet basically is having one meal a day. So it is the complete extreme of the intermittent fasting diet. You're consolidating all your food into like less than an hour a day. And So the concept is, way back in the day, watch Gladiator, watch Troy. At the beginnings of those movies where they show them camped out and they're in their tents, what do? They battle all day long. They get up first thing in the morning. They go straight into battle as soon as sunlight arises. And then at the end of the day, they're exhausted and they come back and they eat and they eat and they feast and they eat and they fill up their bodies, and then getting their body prepared for the next day to where they're going to battle again all day. So that's the concept of the warrior diet. This is, like I said, it's an extreme of the intermittent fasting diet, where you fast for 23 hours out of the day and you gorge for 1 hour out of the day, if it takes that long. And so basically you're replenishing your diet, but insulin stays low in your body all day long, and it's high all at once when you need it for the food you're intaking. This works on the insulin system. It's a harder diet to do. It's pretty hard to fast for 23 hours of the day. You get pretty hangry when you haven't had any breakfast or any lunch and you're saving yourself for dinner. So it's not a diet for everyone. I think men can tolerate this diet a little bit more than women. I'm not trying to distinguish. I think it works well for women as well. It just is harder for them to divide their food or to fast that long. Our bodies are created just a little different. Our hormone systems are a little different, and we need a little bit more insulin throughout the day to support a female body. It's just more tolerable for a man to be able to do this type of diet, and a little bit more difficult for a woman to do this type of diet. So in conclusion, the warrior diet is an extreme form of the intermittent fasting, but for some can be very, very effective. Another diet that kind of flies under the radar a lot and is more consistent with regular eating is a balanced meal diet plan. And so that is basically getting 3 meals a day, but only getting 3 meals a day. No snacking in between, nothing to tide you over. And again, this is based on an insulin sort of release. So the way this diet works is, normally, I like to put the conference scenario in here. You're at a conference and you go, and it's maybe a short conference, a meeting in the morning, something like that. Someone brings donuts. Someone brings some great Krispy Kremes. And so on your first break, you have a Krispy Kreme donut. Pretty good. Tastes great, feels good. One's enough. But then you release insulin. And then the second break, you have another Krispy Kreme donut, and it's not quite as satisfying to your body. And your body's saying, oh, sugar, carbohydrates keep coming in, and you overshoot insulin because you're preparing for even more. So now it drives your body actually hypoglycemic, drives it low, drives your sugar low. And so the third break, you're voracious, you're starving. 2 Krispy Kreme donuts isn't enough. Sometimes you eat 3, and then you're really disappointed because they're running out, and everyone has that same response. So that exaggerated insulin response comes when you keep chasing food with food with food, and especially if that food contains carbohydrates. And so eating a 3 square meal a day, people think that insulin is the hormone of metabolizing carbohydrates and metabolizing sugars and getting those into your cells. But insulin is the hormone that actually opens up the cells to sugars, fats, and to proteins. And so it's an important hormone to release when you're having a meal, because you cannot get the proteins into your cells for utilization, for building, without the insulin. Having balanced meals, eating an appropriate amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fats at the same meal helps to prevent insulin spiking, but it also allows you to get all those nutrients into the cell in a balanced fashion so that there's nothing left over to store into fat. That's how the balanced diet works. 3 meals a day, moderate to small. Usually the best way to do that so that you're not sleeping on a big full stomach is to have the largest meal in the morning, a little bit smaller, and then a little bit smaller at dinner. Those 3 balanced meal diets that can be an effective way to keep your metabolism working and not to feel like you're starving. Again, as far as hormones go, women's hormones favor this sort of diet better because they do need nutrition more frequently, and this can be a very helpful diet as long as you're not overeating with every single meal that you're doing and having a huge calorie intake. Now, most of the diets we've talked about up to this point are pretty natural. They involve food and eating and the way to balance those in different formats and timings and things like that. And then there are diets that are a little bit more forced. There are chemically related diets. All of you have probably heard of the fen-phen diet, which is basically a bunch of stimulants that really activate the adrenal system and burning fat. But those have shown to be kind of harmful to the body because you're overdriving the body. One of the components of the fen-phen diet is shown to cause pulmonary hypertension, which can be a chronic problem and dangerous to your health. So that brings us to the GLP-1s. So the Ozempic, the tirzepatide, and the Mounjaro, and those diets. The GLP-1s, again, work on the insulin system. Again, creating a state in our body that keeps our insulin low. It keeps our carbohydrates processed very quickly. It keeps us from spiking insulin. And those are the way it works. That's why they were invented originally for treating diabetes, because they help your body process insulin much, much better. There are some drawbacks because these are actually man-made peptides. We talked about this in a previous video. They are not naturally occurring peptides to our body. They are man-made. And so there can be some side effects with those. We have to think about what happens when you lose the weight that you want and you go off and then your cravings come back. And the other factor of that is you probably have lost quite a bit of muscle mass if you've been on a GLP-1 for any length of time, because that is one of the side effects. They can cause some muscle wasting. And we've talked about this before. Muscle is our main metabolic tissue. A lot of us think that getting on the treadmill for 4 hours is going to burn calories and we end up not losing any weight. But actually building muscle, going to the gym, lifting weights, building muscle mass is high metabolic tissue and it burns fat at rest. And so we've got this conundrum to where we've lost weight with a GLP-1, but we've also lost muscle mass. And when we've lost that muscle mass, we have lost our ability to burn carbohydrates, fats, and use up energy because we have less muscle mass. So now we've gone off of this agent that has caused us to decrease our appetite and cause some muscle loss. And we're expecting our bodies not to bounce back in some ways. Now, some effects, another side effect that can be detrimental, some of the earlier GLP-1s had more of this effect called gastroparesis, where it slows down your digestive tract. And some of that can be permanent. So it slows down your digestive tract. Another side effect is pancreatitis, because it can constrict the bile duct, and that can cause a pancreatitis. So watch out if you're having abdominal pain, you're not feeling good on a GLP-1 when you first start it. And doctors out there, make sure you test for blood tests for pancreatic enzymes and digestive enzymes, liver function before you go on a GLP-1. And if anyone's having any problems whatsoever, retest those things to make sure that they're not developing a serious reaction, because those are out there. I have seen them. You've got to consider when you're going off of a GLP-1, what do you do in that transition? What can you do to not stay on this drug forever? And so you have to consider possibly some of these other diet strategies and controlling your calorie intake, because your digestion may continue to be slowed down. And so intermittent fasting may be a good option and things like that, whereas they are good at helping you lose weight and they reverse a lot of metabolic conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, which are favorable and beneficial things for your health. There are some detriments like losing muscle mass and the possible side effects and the gastroparesis that you may have to deal with more long term. So GLP-1s, again, a good way to lose weight, but in summary, there are some drawbacks to that as well. In balancing our ideas of weight loss and fat loss comes this concept of contouring. There is some newer technology out there, fat loss lasers, that can help with losing those inches around the middle. To be quite specific, just about a ½ inch a session around the middle as far as measurement. Urconia makes a laser called the Zerona Z8. It's a violet laser. Fat loss lasers are a new alternative for helping with weight loss and to help with contouring, because you really usually get the most benefit where you aim the laser. The violet laser stimulates mitochondria to a very high degree. So it stimulates your metabolic rate and your energy, the way you feel. And a lot of people, after having a fat loss session, usually we suggest starting with 6. We see after that people have lost some inches that they want to, usually about 3 inches around the waist, which is significant. And they come back with saying, I don't feel as much energy. And they want more laser sessions just to get their energy back up. So it has a kind of a dual function. It increases your metabolic rate somewhat and gives your mitochondria the more ability to produce energy, and that energy gets utilized, so you burn more calories. And it also directly targets the fat cells and causes them to empty out so the body can eliminate them. So as an alternative or as an adjunct to any diet, this method of losing more fat or getting rid of fat, especially in stubborn places, can be very effective. In the years of practice that I've had, I've learned so many things from patients. Patients bring me ideas, say, oh, what do you think about this thing? Or what do you think about this diet? So there may have been many things that I've missed. There may be some new fad or trend that actually works. If anything has worked for you, leave a comment, and maybe if it's something worthy of addressing or putting online and looking into the science about, then we can possibly do that. I've heard recently about this ice water diet where you drink a big glass of ice water in the morning. There are some scientific studies, I think, behind it that show that it can cause some weight loss. You may add that to something else. You may do that alone. I don't know. But anything that you may have tried, any fad diet, lemonade cleanse, anything like that that you might have tried that has been successful for you, go ahead and leave something in the comments. Also, tell us what has worked for you in the past, and that may be something to share, because we're about education. We're about sharing knowledge on this channel, and we want to encourage people to share their experiences. So leave a comment, like our channel, subscribe, trying to learn all these terms because I'm old. And so leave us a comment and stay safe, be well, love your family, and good luck on your weight loss in this new year.